Elaine Carter, 32, never imagined her father's last words would be, "You were never meant to inherit anything." Standing over his hospital bed, clutching the legal papers that would transfer the multi-million-dollar family business to my brothers, I felt my world collapse. 25 years of being told I wasn't good enough because I was born female culminated in this moment. What my family didn't know was that I'd already built my own empire. And I was about to use it to take back everything they stole from me. If my story of family betrayal and sweet revenge resonates with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to support more stories like mine. I'd love to know where you're watching from and if you've ever had to prove your worth to those who should have believed in you from the start. My journey from disowned daughter to powerful businesswoman taught me that sometimes the family we choose is stronger than the family we're born into. Let's continue with how it all began. I grew up in Dearborn, Michigan, in a traditional Lebanese-American family where gender roles weren't just suggested, they were mandated. My father, Abraham Carter, born Abraham Karam before he Americanized our surname, had built Carter Manufacturing from nothing after immigrating in the 1980s. What began as a small auto part shop grew into a respected supplier for the big three automakers. By the time I was 10, my father was worth millions, with a sprawling house in the suburbs and the respect of the business community. But inside our home, old country rules applied. My brothers, David and Michael, 3 and 5 years older than me respectively, were groomed for business from the moment they could walk. They attended meetings with our father, were taught the machinery introduced to important clients. I, on the other hand, was steered toward cooking, appearance, and the art of conversation, skills my mother Rachel insisted would make me a good wife someday. A woman's place is supporting her husband, not competing with him, my mother would say, smoothing my rebellious curls with hands that smelled of rosewater and cardamom. Your father built all this for your brothers to inherit. Your inheritance will be a good marriage. I was 12 when I first truly understood what I was up against. My math teacher had entered me in a statewide competition, which I won handily. I rushed home, trophy in hand, bursting to tell my father. I found him in his study with my brothers, discussing the newest production line. "Baba, look." I held up my trophy. "I beat high schoolers in the math competition." He barely glanced up from his paperwork. "That's nice, Elaine. Now, let the men finish their work. Numbers are for men's business, not little girls playing with calculators." Michael snickered. David at least had the decency to look uncomfortable. But neither contradicted our father. Only my grandmother Helena, my father's mother who lived with us, saw me for who I really was. In her small bedroom filled with old country treasures, she would tell me stories of strong women from our homeland. "They think the old country was only men doing important things," she would say in her thick accent, her fingers working worry beads as she spoke. "But women ran everything from behind. Smart women like you. Don't let them dim your light, Habibti." By 16, I was top of my class and secretly reading business journals and manufacturing trade publications. I developed a passion for logistics and supply chain management. I could see inefficiencies in systems like some people spot grammatical errors. After visiting the factory floor during a family day, I'd spent weeks developing a cost-saving manufacturing process that would reduce waste by 22%. I carefully prepared a presentation and asked my father if I could show him something important. Surprisingly, he agreed. For 30 minutes in his home office, I explained my process, complete with charts and projections. He studied my work silently, expression unreadable. 2 weeks later, during a dinner celebration, I overheard my father telling his board members about the brilliant efficiency process he developed. My process. When I entered the dining room with coffee for the men, they applauded him. "You've outdone yourself, Abraham," said the operations director. "This could save us millions over 5 years." My father nodded, not even glancing my way. "Just doing what's best for the company my sons will inherit." Later, I confronted David, who had been in the meeting. "You knew that was my process. Why didn't you say something?" He looked uncomfortable, adjusting his expensive watch. "Come on, Elaine. What does it matter who came up with it? It's all for the family business anyway. Besides, no one would believe it came from you. Why not? I demanded. Because you're. He hesitated. You know, a girl. That's just how things are. Michael was even worse. When I tried expressing interest in the business, he'd laugh. Look at little sis playing businessman. What's next? You want to drive a truck too? Focus on finding a husband who can support you. That's what women in our family do. Our house itself reinforced these divisions. The formal dining room where my father hosted business associates was practically a men-only zone. Women served the food, then disappeared. My mother had designed the entire room to my father's specifications, down to the imposing mahogany table where decisions worth millions were made. Decisions I wasn't allowed to participate in despite understanding the business better than my brothers ever would. My Uncle Joseph, my father's younger brother who worked in sales at the company, was the only one who seemed to recognize my potential. During family gatherings, he'd slip me articles about women executives or casually mention my academic achievements to my father. But even he wouldn't openly challenge my father's authority. Your father is a product of his upbringing, Uncle Joseph told me once. In his mind, he's protecting you by keeping you away from the harsh business world. He doesn't see what I see, that you'd thrive in it. My high school guidance counselor, Ms. Reynolds, became another quiet ally. After seeing my test scores and aptitude assessments, she called me into her office. Elaine, you have the potential to attend any university in the country. Have you thought about college applications? I laughed bitterly. My parents expect me to live at home until I get married. College isn't part of the plan. Ms. Reynolds leaned forward. Plans can change, especially when there's someone else's plans for your life. She helped me secretly apply to top business schools across the country. And when the acceptance letters came, she held them for me until I was ready to make my move. The Stanford acceptance letter arrived on my 18th birthday. I'd hidden the application process from my family, knowing they would never approve. That night, after a tense family dinner where my parents had invited the son of my father's business associate, clearly hoping to spark a match, I decided it was time. I have an announcement, I said, as my mother brought out the birthday cake. I've been accepted to Stanford University. I'll be studying business with a focus on supply chain management. I leave in 6 weeks. The silence that followed was deafening. My mother dropped the cake knife. Michael snorted in disbelief. David stared at his plate. My father's face turned a dangerous shade of red. Absolutely not, he finally said, his voice deadly quiet. No daughter of mine is moving across the country to study business. That's not your path. It's the path I'm choosing, I replied, hands shaking beneath the table. What followed was the worst fight our family had ever experienced. My father raged, switching between English and Arabic as he listed all the ways I was disgracing the family. My mother wept, telling me I was killing her with my selfishness. Michael mocked my ambitions, while David remained silent, wide-eyed at my defiance. If you leave this house for that school, you are no longer my daughter, my father finally declared, pounding his fist on the table. You will be dead to this family. That night, as I cried in my room, my grandmother Helena slipped in and sat on my bed. Her arthritis had worsened over the years, but she moved with purpose as she pressed a thick envelope into my hands. $50,000, she whispered. My life savings. I've been adding to it since the day you were born. I always knew you would fly away someday. Grandma, I can't take this, I protested, trying to hand it back. She closed my fingers around the envelope. Yes, you can. I never had the chance you have. My father married me off at 16 to a man 30 years older. She cupped my face. Promise me something, Habibti. Become what they say you cannot. Show them all what a woman can build. 6 weeks later, I left for Stanford with 2 suitcases and my grandmother's money. My mother refused to drive me to the airport. My brothers were conveniently busy. Only my father appeared as I called the taxi, not to say goodbye, but to make one last attempt at control. When this foolishness fails, don't come crawling back, he said coldly. The daughter I raised would never dishonor her family this way. The daughter you raised never existed, I replied, getting into the taxi. She was just a projection of your limitations. Those first years at Stanford were the hardest of my life. I worked 3 part-time jobs while maintaining a full course load. Without family connections or support, I had to create my own safety net. I lived on ramen noodles and coffee, studied until my eyes burned, and cried myself to sleep more nights than I care to admit. My roommate Jasmine Kim became my first real friend outside the cultural bubble I'd grown up in. The daughter of Korean immigrants who had encouraged her educational ambitions, she couldn't understand my family's rejection, but offered unwavering support. "Families are supposed to lift you up, not hold you down," she said one night after I'd received another rejected phone call to my parents. "What they're doing isn't normal or right, Elaine. You know that, right?" It took me months to truly believe her. The cultural programming ran deep. Professor Margaret Winters, who taught advanced supply chain theory, became another pivotal figure in my life. After I submitted a paper analyzing inefficiencies in traditional manufacturing logistics, she asked me to stay after class. "Ms. Carter, this analysis is graduate-level work," she said, tapping my paper. "Have you considered focusing your studies on logistics technology? There's a revolution happening in that field." Under her guidance, I began developing a software program for my senior project, an integrated logistics platform that could predict supply chain disruptions before they happened and automatically suggest alternative routing. What began as a class assignment quickly evolved into something with real-world potential. During my junior year summer internship at a major tech company, I had the chance to implement a beta version of my software. The results were immediate and impressive. A 17% increase in efficiency and significant cost savings. The executives took notice. "You've got something revolutionary here," my internship supervisor told me. "If you develop this further, every manufacturing and shipping company in the world will want it." I was riding this professional high when I received the call about my grandmother Helena's death. Heart failure, according to Uncle Joseph, who had tracked down my number. The funeral would be in 3 days. "Should I come?" I asked, throat tight with grief. A pause. "She would have wanted you there. But prepare yourself. Nothing has changed with your father." The funeral was a study in contrasts, the warmth of my memories with my grandmother versus the ice of my family's reception. My mother hugged me stiffly before retreating to my father's side. My father acknowledged me with only a curt nod before turning away. Michael acted as if I were a distant acquaintance, while David at least made awkward small talk. After the service, the family lawyer approached me. "Your grandmother left something for you." She was quite insistent about it. It was a box containing her personal journals, written in Arabic and dating back to her childhood. With them was a note in her shaky handwriting. "So you understand you are not the first, but I pray you will be the last to suffer this way." Over the following weeks, I had the journals translated. They revealed a pattern going back generations: bright, ambitious women in our family systematically sidelined and silenced. My grandmother had been a gifted mathematician in Lebanon, but was married off before she could pursue education. Her sister had developed a revolutionary olive oil processing technique, but watched her brothers take credit and profit. History repeating itself, generation after generation. Before returning to Stanford, David unexpectedly asked to meet for coffee. Away from our parents, he seemed different, less certain, more thoughtful. "You're doing well at that fancy school?" he asked. "Top of my class," I replied, not bothering to hide my pride. He nodded, fidgeting with his cup. "I always knew you were the smartest one of us, even when we were kids." He paused. "Father never should have taken credit for your process improvement. I should have said something." It was the closest thing to an apology I would ever get from my family. But when I tried to tell him about my software development, his eyes glazed over. "That's great, Elaine. Really. But maybe you should consider coming home now. Mother misses you." Father would never admit it, but the business could use someone with your attention to detail. As what, David? The office manager? A secretary? We both know Father would never give me real authority. He didn't deny it. Before I left, My mother made one last attempt at reconciliation, on her terms, of course. "Come home, Elaine," she pleaded, holding my hands in our family kitchen. "Find a nice man from a good family. Have children. That's where true fulfillment lies for a woman." "Is that where you found fulfillment, Mother?" I asked quietly. "Watching Father take all the credit while you managed everything behind the scenes? Never receiving recognition for your contributions?" Her face fell, and for a moment, I saw something I'd never noticed before: resignation, maybe even regret. But it quickly disappeared behind her practiced smile. "That's a woman's lot in life, Habibi. We support our men, our family. We don't need the spotlight." I left Michigan more determined than ever to forge my own path. The weight of generations of silenced women from my grandmother's journals fueled my ambition. I would succeed not just for myself, but for all of them. After graduation, I convinced two classmates, Ryan Lopez, a brilliant coder, and Zach Thompson, a marketing specialist, to join me in developing my logistics software into a full commercial platform. We named our startup Logitech and set up shop in a tiny office in Palo Alto with secondhand computers and big dreams. Those early days defined bootstrapping. We worked 18-hour days, slept on office floors, and subsisted on the cheapest food we could find. I stretched my remaining savings from Grandma Helena to cover both living expenses and business costs, knowing we had a limited runway to achieve profitability. "We have 9 months before we're completely broke," I told my partners one night over dollar menu burgers. "We need to land a paying client by then, or we're done." Professor Winters came through with our first real opportunity, connecting us with a medium-sized electronics manufacturer struggling with supply chain issues. Their CEO was skeptical about hiring 3 20-somethings with an unproven system, but desperate enough to give us a chance. "You have 60 days to show results," he told us. "After that, we're going with an established vendor." We worked around the clock, customizing our platform to their specific needs. By day 45, their logistics efficiency had improved by 32%, and they were saving thousands weekly on shipping and inventory costs. They signed a 3-year contract and, more importantly, became our biggest advocates in the industry. Word spread. A snowball effect began as one client led to another, then another. Our little startup that had begun in a glorified closet was suddenly the talk of the logistics world. By year 3, Logitech had grown to 50 employees and a downtown San Francisco office. By year 5, we had clients across North America and were expanding into Europe and Asia. Jasmine joined us in year 2, leaving her consulting job to become our COO. With her operational expertise complementing my product vision, we became a formidable female leadership team in an industry dominated by men. "We're making history, you know," she said one night as we celebrated landing a Fortune 500 client. 2 women of color running a tech company that's disrupting an entire industry. "Your father is an idiot for not seeing what you're capable of." I rarely spoke about my family, but Jasmine understood the wound that still festered beneath my success. In quiet moments, the rejection still hurt, even as magazine profiles and industry awards validated my expertise. Part of me still longed for my father to see what I had built, to acknowledge that his daughter had succeeded in a man's world. At 27, I became CEO when we restructured the company following a major round of funding. The venture capitalists had been hesitant about a young woman at the helm, but our growth numbers spoke for themselves. The same week I took the CEO position, Forbes featured Logitech in their Companies to Watch list with a small photo of me, now worth an estimated $40 million, accompanying the article. I deliberately used my maiden name in all press, hoping to fly under my family's radar. As far as I knew, they'd made no effort to contact me in nearly a decade, and I'd made none to reach them. I occasionally searched for Carter Manufacturing online, seeing press releases about expansions or new contracts, always featuring photos of my father and brothers looking prosperous and pleased with themselves. My personal life took a back seat to building the company. A brief relationship with Ryan, my co-founder, imploded when the pressure of being both business partners and romantic partners became too much. Several subsequent relationships failed when men discovered they were dating not just a woman, but a CEO with a schedule and ambition that intimidated them. "I feel like I'm competing with your company," my last boyfriend had complained during our breakup conversation. "And I'm always going to lose." Perhaps it was a defense mechanism, but I channeled all that frustrated personal energy back into Logitech and into creating opportunities for other women. I established an anonymous scholarship fund for girls from traditional cultural backgrounds who wanted to pursue STEM education. I mentored female entrepreneurs and quietly funded women-led startups. If my own family couldn't see my worth, I would ensure other young women never questioned theirs. As Logitech approached its 7th year, we'd become an industry standard, with our software managing supply chains for companies around the globe. Our annual revenue exceeded $300 million, and we employed over 500 people. The little girl who'd been told her only value was in making a good marriage had built something remarkable. It was around this time that I received an unexpected LinkedIn message from Uncle Joseph. He'd seen the Forbes article. "Your grandmother would be proud," he wrote. "The company you've built is impressive. I wish I could say the same for the family business." Over a cautious phone call, he filled me in on what I'd missed. Carter Manufacturing was struggling. My father, now in his 60s, had refused to modernize operations or adapt to changing market conditions. My brothers, while officially running day-to-day operations, lacked the vision or expertise to right the ship. They were losing contracts to more innovative competitors using Logitech software, though they didn't know it. "Your father would never admit it," Uncle Joseph said, "but they're in trouble. David's trying his best, but Michael's more interested in looking successful than doing the work. And your father won't listen to outside advice." Something shifted inside me during that conversation. For years, I'd fantasized about my family seeing my success and regretting their treatment of me. Now, facing the reality of their struggle, I found myself considering something different, not just validation, but vindication. "Send me whatever information you can about their financial situation," I told my uncle, discreetly. The next day, I hired a private investigator to gather intelligence on Carter Manufacturing's finances, contracts, and market position. As the data came in, a plan began forming in my mind, a plan that would either heal old wounds or deepen them beyond repair. I was about to find out which. If you've ever been underestimated by the people who should have supported you most, hit that like button right now. Sometimes the most powerful motivation comes from proving wrong those who never believed in you. As my story continues, you'll see how I navigated the ultimate family business showdown. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss what happens next. At 30, I was running a company valued at $1.2 billion. Logitech had revolutionized supply chain management, and I'd been featured in business magazines as one of the top female entrepreneurs under 40. I had a penthouse in San Francisco, a vacation home in Maui, and more money than I could spend in a lifetime. By every external measure, I had succeeded beyond anyone's wildest expectations, except perhaps my own. Yet something remained unresolved. The pain of family rejection had calcified into a hard knot inside me, affecting relationships and quiet moments when professional validation wasn't enough to drown out my father's voice in my head. "You were never meant for this." The call from David came on a Tuesday afternoon as I was reviewing quarterly projections with our financial team. "Elaine," he said when I picked up, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. "It's Dad. He's had a stroke. It's pretty bad." 12 years of silence, and this is what finally broke it. Not congratulations on my success, not an apology for the past, but a crisis requiring all hands on deck. "I'm sorry to hear that," I replied, unsure what else to say. "How is he?" "Stable but serious. Partial paralysis on his right side. But that's not the only reason I'm calling." He paused. "The company's in trouble. Serious trouble. We might not make payroll next month." The family business that had been prioritized over me my entire life was now floundering, and they were turning to me for help. The irony wasn't lost on me. I arranged for my private jet to fly me to Michigan the next day. The decision wasn't entirely rational, Part of me wanted to see with my own eyes what had become of the family that had discarded me. The Carter family home, once the showpiece of the neighborhood, showed subtle signs of financial strain. The landscaping was slightly overgrown, the paint on the trim beginning to peel. My mother answered the door, gasping softly at the sight of me. She had aged dramatically, her once black hair now steel gray, deep lines framing her mouth and eyes. "Elaine," she whispered, reaching for me then hesitating, as if unsure of her welcome. "You came." The awkward family dinner that followed was a study in unspoken tensions. My father, now using a wheelchair, sat at the head of the table as always, though his right arm lay useless in his lap. He acknowledged my presence with a curt nod, but said little. My mother fluttered nervously between kitchen and dining room, serving a meal far less elaborate than the ones I remembered from childhood. Michael, now balding and heavier than I recalled, was openly hostile. "So the prodigal daughter returns," he said, pouring himself a third glass of wine. "Guess it took Dad nearly dying for you to remember your family exists." "That's enough, Michael," David interjected. He'd aged better than our brother, but stress had etched permanent worry lines between his brows. "Elaine's here to help." "Help." My father's voice was slurred but still carried authority. "What can she help with? Women don't understand business." I almost laughed at the absurdity. This from a man whose company was on the brink of bankruptcy, speaking to a woman who had built a billion-dollar enterprise. But old habits die hard, and I found myself momentarily tongue-tied in his presence. After dinner, David took me to his office to review the company books. The situation was dire. Cash reserves depleted, contracts dwindling, equipment outdated, and crushing debt. My father had mortgaged everything, including the family home, to keep the company afloat. "How did it get this bad?" I asked, paging through balance sheets showing year after year of declining revenue. David ran a hand through his graying hair. "Dad refused to modernize. Said the old ways worked fine for 30 years, so why change? Then the recession hit, and competitors with better technology started undercutting us. We lost 3 major contracts in 2 years. And Michael's contributions?" David's silence was answer enough. The next morning, we gathered for a family meeting in my father's home office. I presented my analysis and a potential rescue plan that would require significant operational changes, new technology implementation, and probably layoffs. My father listened in stony silence until I finished. Then he turned to David as if I hadn't spoken. "Call Peterson at the bank. See if we can extend the loan terms." "Dad," David said gently, "we've already extended twice. Elaine's plan might be our best option." My father's gaze finally swung to me, cold and dismissive. "I built this company from nothing. I'm not going to let it be dismantled by a daughter who abandoned her family for some California fantasy." "That California fantasy," I replied evenly, "is now worth over $1 billion. The technology my company developed could save yours if you'd put aside your pride." His face flushed dangerously. "You were never meant to inherit anything. This company belongs to my sons. Always has, always will. Your place was to marry well and give me grandsons, not play businesswoman." Even after all my success, his words still had the power to wound. I gathered my papers and stood. "I'll be leaving tomorrow. Good luck with the bank." That night, my mother came to my old bedroom, which remained eerily preserved like a shrine to the daughter they'd lost, or perhaps the daughter they'd wished I would be. "He doesn't mean it," she said, perching on the edge of my bed like she used to when I was small. "He's proud, and the stroke has made him more difficult. He meant every word, Mother. He always has." She twisted her wedding ring, a nervous habit I remembered from childhood. "You know, I went to college for a year. Business administration. Before I met your father." This was news to me. "You never told me that. What was the point?" "I made my choice when I married your father. In our culture, a woman's place is wherever she decides it is." I interrupted. "You had dreams once. You gave them up. I refuse to do the same." She looked at me with something like wonder. You always were the strongest of my children. She hesitated. I knew, that you were the smartest, that you understood the business better than your brothers ever could. But I couldn't. I couldn't defy your father. So you let him crush my spirit instead? I thought I was protecting you, she whispered, preparing you for the world as it was, not as I wished it could be. I left the next morning, but not before Uncle Joseph provided me with internal documents showing just how desperate the company's situation had become. They had less than 6 months before complete collapse. Before leaving the house, I visited my grandmother Helena's old room, now used for storage. Running my fingers along her dresser, I found a loose panel at the back. One of her hiding places she'd shown me as a child. Inside was a yellowed envelope with my name on it. For when you are ready to claim what is yours, the note inside read, some battles must be fought not just for ourselves, but for those who come after us. You have more allies than you know. On the way to the airport, I received a text from David asking to meet at a coffee shop near the manufacturing plant. He looked haggard, the weight of the failing family business evident in the dark circles under his eyes. I shouldn't be talking to you behind Dad's back, he said, voice low despite the noisy cafe. But I'm drowning here, Elaine. We all are. Your plan, it could work. I know it could. Then implement it, I said simply. Dad won't allow it. And as long as he holds controlling interest, his word is law. He rubbed his temples. I've got 2 kids in college and a mortgage. Michael's underwater on his 3rd divorce. We need this company to survive, but Dad's pride is going to sink us all. For a moment, I considered offering financial help directly to David. But I knew that wouldn't solve the structural problems or address the deeper injustice that had shaped our family for generations. I'll think about what can be done, I said finally. I was already on my plane back to California when my phone rang. It was my father. David told me about your meeting, he said without preamble. I'm warning you, Elaine. Stay away from my company. Whatever you're planning, stop it now. Or what, Dad? You'll disown me again? That card's already been played. I've instructed our lawyers to accelerate the transfer of all company assets and interests to your brothers, he replied coldly. Even if something happens to me, you'll never get your hands on what I've built. The line went dead. He still didn't understand. I didn't want to take what he'd built. I wanted to take back what should have been mine all along. My rightful place, my recognition, my heritage. And now I had the means to do it. Back in San Francisco, I assembled a small, elite team within Logitech to execute what I was now calling Project Homecoming. Jasmine, my COO and closest friend, Sandra Ramirez, our brilliant legal counsel, Marcus Chun, our financial strategist, and Thomas Wilson, our M&A specialist. These were the only people I trusted with the truth that this wasn't just a business acquisition but a deeply personal mission. Let me get this straight, Jasmine said during our first strategy session in my private conference room. You want to acquire your family's company, the one that never valued you, without them knowing it's you behind it all? Exactly, I confirmed. Carter Manufacturing is vulnerable. Their debt load is unsustainable. They've lost key contracts, and their technology is outdated. On paper, it's not an acquisition that makes sense for Logitech. But we're not doing this for the balance sheet. We're doing it for justice, Sandra said quietly. As a woman who'd fought her way through the male-dominated legal world, she understood better than most. We created a shell company, Phoenix Acquisitions, to mask my involvement. Over the next 3 months, we methodically purchased Carter Manufacturing's debt from various creditors, becoming their principal lender without raising suspicions. Meanwhile, Thomas analyzed their client contracts, identifying critical weaknesses we could exploit if necessary. Their 3 largest customers are all considering non-renewal, Thomas reported. One is already using our software with another supplier and seeing 40% better results. Marcus developed detailed financial models showing exactly how much we could offer for the company, enough to appear generous to a desperate seller but still protecting our interests. We can structure it to keep them operating as a separate entity initially. That way, the acquisition won't raise eyebrows in the industry. Sandra crafted the legal framework that would give me complete control, while initially keeping my identity concealed. The paperwork is airtight, she assured me. They'll never know it's you until you're ready to reveal yourself. I threw myself into the plan with single-minded focus, working 20-hour days, sleeping on my office couch, and micromanaging every detail. It wasn't until I collapsed from exhaustion during a meeting that Jasmine staged an intervention. "This isn't healthy, Elaine," she said, sitting beside my hospital bed after doctors had treated me for severe dehydration and exhaustion. "I understand why this matters to you, but you're destroying yourself in the process." "I need to finish this," I insisted weakly.
"Why?"
"What do you really want from this acquisition? Revenge? Validation? Closure? Because I'm not sure any of those things will heal what your family broke." Her question haunted me. What did I want? To prove my father wrong? To save the family business despite their treatment of me? To destroy it and salt the earth? I wasn't entirely sure anymore. After being discharged from the hospital, I took a rare day off and visited my grandmother Helena's grave in a small Lebanese Orthodox cemetery outside San Francisco. I'd had her remains moved there years ago, wanting her close to me. "What would you have me do, Grandma?" I whispered, placing white roses on her headstone. "They're still the same people who threw me away. Taking over won't change that." No answer came, of course, but I felt calmer afterward, more certain. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about righting a generational wrong. Just as we were preparing to make our move, Uncle Joseph called with alarming news. "Your father's health is deteriorating under the financial stress. The doctors are concerned about another stroke." For the first time, I hesitated. Was I becoming what I despised, someone willing to sacrifice family for business? Should I delay? I asked my uncle. After a long pause, he replied, "If you want to save this company, and possibly this family, delay is the enemy. But perhaps there's a way to proceed with compassion." I modified our acquisition plan to ensure the family home would be protected regardless of the outcome. It was a small concession, but an important one. I wouldn't make them homeless, no matter what happened with the business. The morning we were set to have our attorneys make initial contact, Michael somehow discovered my involvement. His voice on the phone was slurred with what I assumed was alcohol. "You scheming bitch," he spat. "I always knew you'd try to take what isn't yours. Dad was right about you." "How did you find out?" I asked calmly. "Does it matter? We're meeting with Kellerman Manufacturing tomorrow. They're making an offer, and I'm accepting it on behalf of the company. You'll get nothing." Kellerman was a notorious corporate raider known for acquiring companies, stripping their assets, and discarding the remains. If they got Carter Manufacturing, hundreds of employees, many who had been with the company for decades, would lose their jobs. "Don't do this, Michael," I warned. "Kellerman will destroy everything Dad built. Everyone will lose. Everyone except me." He laughed bitterly. "They've promised me a position on their executive team. That's more than you're offering, I bet." I accelerated our timeline, having Sandra contact Kellerman directly to inform them that Phoenix Acquisitions now held the majority of Carter Manufacturing's debt and would exercise conversion rights if any sale proceeded without our approval. It was a bluff. We weren't quite there yet, but it worked. Kellerman backed out, leaving my family confused and increasingly desperate. Meanwhile, David had been busy destroying evidence of my father's questionable tax practices. Practices Uncle Joseph had quietly documented over years of suspecting something wasn't right. "We have enough to trigger an IRS investigation," Sandra told me, reviewing the documents. "Your father has been dramatically underreporting income for at least a decade. We're not using that unless absolutely necessary," I decided. "But make sure David knows we have it." When David received copies of the incriminating tax documents with a simple note, "We should discuss these before they become public," he agreed to meet. The man who sat across from me in a neutral Detroit hotel suite looked broken, nothing like the confident older brother who had once stood silently by while my ideas were stolen. "What do you want, Elaine?" he asked wearily. "I want to save the company, David. I want to protect the employees who depend on it. And yes, I want recognition for what should have been mine all along. Dad will never accept your help. You know that. He won't have a choice." Phoenix Acquisitions now controls enough of your debt to force the issue. His eyes widened as understanding dawned. You're Phoenix? You've been buying our debt. I nodded. Tomorrow, representatives from Phoenix will present acquisition terms to the board. The offer is fair, more than fair, given the company's condition. You can advise Dad to take it, or you can watch everything collapse. And then what? You reveal yourself as the puppet master and gloat. This isn't about gloating, David. It's about justice. For me, for Grandma Helena, for every woman in our family who was pushed aside because of her gender. He left without promising anything, but I knew he would present the facts to our father. Whether Abraham Carter would finally bend his rigid principles to save his company was another question entirely. The next day, representatives from Phoenix Acquisitions, actually Logitech executives carefully coached by Sandra, presented our offer to the Carter Manufacturing Board. The terms were generous: debt forgiveness, capital investment, technology upgrades, and retention of most employees. In exchange, Phoenix would take controlling interest, with the Carter family maintaining minority ownership and board positions. My father, attending by video from his home office due to his health, listened to the presentation in stony silence. When it concluded, he asked a single question. Who owns Phoenix Acquisitions? Our representative answered as instructed. A private investor who sees potential in Carter Manufacturing's legacy and workforce. My father's eyes narrowed suspiciously, but with creditors closing in and no alternatives, the board voted to accept our offer, with my father casting the lone dissenting vote. The acquisition moved forward rapidly. Within weeks, paperwork was signed, funds transferred, and the transition team deployed. Everything was proceeding according to plan, with one final act remaining: the revelation of the woman behind Phoenix Acquisitions. I scheduled a meeting at Carter Manufacturing headquarters for what the family believed was a routine signing ceremony with Phoenix representatives. Instead, they would find me waiting for them. After 12 years of exile, I was coming home to claim what should have been mine all along. The Carter Manufacturing headquarters hadn't changed much in the years since I'd last seen it. The same faded company logo adorned the brick exterior. The same outdated reception area greeted visitors. Even the framed photos in the main hallway remained unchanged, my father and brothers at various company milestones, ribbons being cut, contracts being signed. Not a single image of me, despite the innovations I'd contributed before being cast out. I arrived an hour early, accompanied by Jasmine and Sandra. We set up in the main conference room, arranging the final acquisition documents on the polished mahogany table where, as a teenager, I'd watched my father take credit for my ideas. Are you ready for this? Jasmine asked, squeezing my hand. I've been ready for 12 years, I replied, though my racing heart suggested otherwise. My family arrived together. My father in his wheelchair pushed by a nurse, my mother walking beside him looking anxious, David and Michael following with matching expressions of resignation. They expected to meet anonymous executives from Phoenix Acquisitions. The shock on their faces when they saw me sitting at the head of the table was everything I had imagined and more. What is this? My father demanded, face flushing dangerously. What trick are you playing, Elaine? No trick, Dad, I replied calmly. Just business. I am Phoenix Acquisitions. Or rather, the founder and CEO of Logitech, which now owns Phoenix, which now owns controlling interest in Carter Manufacturing. Michael lunged forward, only to be restrained by David. You manipulative bitch. I knew it. My mother sank into a chair, one hand pressed to her chest. Elaine, what have you done? What none of you would let me do 12 years ago, I answered. I've saved this company. I gestured to the documents on the table. These papers transfer controlling interest of Carter Manufacturing to Phoenix Acquisitions and, by extension, to me. They've already been approved by your board and your creditors. All that remains is for the family to sign the final acknowledgments. My father's face had gone from red to gray. His breathing became labored, his left hand clutching at his chest. The nurse rushed to his side, barking orders for someone to call an ambulance. In the chaos that followed, I found myself oddly detached. The dramatic confrontation I'd scripted in my mind was being interrupted by my father's mortality, a factor I hadn't fully considered despite knowing his health was fragile. As paramedics loaded him into an ambulance, I heard my mother's accusation. "Are you satisfied now? Is this what you wanted?" I wasn't sure how to answer. The next 48 hours were a blur of hospital waiting rooms and tense conversations. My father had suffered a second stroke, more severe than the first. He was stabilized but unconscious. The doctors were cautiously optimistic about his survival but warned of potentially significant additional impairment. My mother barely acknowledged my presence in the hospital, focusing all her attention on my father. Michael openly blamed me for causing the stroke, while David seemed torn between family loyalty and business pragmatism. "The acquisition papers still need signatures," he said quietly as we stood outside our father's ICU room. "Regardless of this." "I know," I replied, "but they can wait until he's stable. And if he doesn't recover enough to sign, what then?" It was a valid question. As much as this was about personal vindication, it was also a business transaction with significant implications for hundreds of employees. While waiting for news about my father's condition, I used the time to tour the manufacturing facility. The employees eyed me curiously. Most knew me only as the estranged daughter of the founder, if they knew me at all. The plant manager, Teresa Martinez, had been with the company since I was a child and remembered me. "You were always asking questions, always trying to understand how things worked," she recalled as she showed me around. "Your father was proud of that, you know. At least at first. Until he realized I might actually want answers," I replied. Teresa shrugged. "He's a man of his generation and culture. That doesn't excuse how he treated you, but it might explain it." As we walked the production floor, I saw firsthand the consequences of years of underinvestment and mismanagement. Outdated equipment, inefficient processes, demoralized workers. All things that could be fixed with the right leadership and investment. Things I was now in a position to provide. On the third day, my father regained consciousness. The doctors confirmed he'd suffered additional damage affecting his speech and memory, though the extent wouldn't be clear for some time. Against medical advice, he demanded a family meeting in his hospital room. We gathered around his bed, my mother, my brothers, and me. Uncle Joseph came too, standing quietly in the corner as a witness to what was about to unfold. I brought documents outlining exactly how the company had systematically stolen and profited from my ideas over the years, from the manufacturing process improvements I developed as a teenager to concepts I'd suggested before leaving for college. Uncle Joseph had helped compile this record, adding his own observations of how my contributions had been erased. "You can deny it all you want," I said, placing the folder on my father's bed. "But we both know the truth. You took my ideas because acknowledging them would mean acknowledging that your daughter had value beyond being someone's wife." My father's speech was slurred, but understandable. "You betrayed family, went behind my back." "I learned from the best," I replied coldly. "You went behind my back my entire childhood, taking credit for my work while telling me I wasn't good enough." Michael couldn't contain himself. "Oh, poor little Elaine. Always the victim. You abandoned this family, moved across the country to play big shot CEO, and now you want us to feel sorry for you? You're pathetic." "Michael," my mother gasped, "but he was just getting started. Dad was right about you. Women don't belong in business. They're too emotional, too vindictive. Look at you, you built a billion-dollar company just to get back at Daddy. How fucking sad is that?" David stepped between us as I advanced toward Michael. "That's enough. Both of you." He turned to me. "Elaine, what exactly do you want here? Revenge? Control? An apology? Because if it's the latter, you might be waiting a long time." That was the question, wasn't it? What did I truly want? Uncle Joseph stepped forward. "Perhaps I can offer some perspective." He looked directly at my father. "Abraham, what you did to Elaine is exactly what your father did to his sisters. I watched it happen when we were young. Our sisters Fatima and Yasmin, brilliant women. Pushed aside, their ideas appropriated, their ambitions crushed. And for what? To protect male pride? To uphold outdated traditions? The cycle continues because we allow it. My father looked away, but not before I caught something in his expression, recognition, perhaps. Even regret. My mother surprised everyone by speaking next. I had dreams once, she said softly. Did you know that, Abraham? Before we married, I wanted to study design. I had a scholarship.
She looked at me.
I gave it up because that's what women in our family did. We sacrificed. We endured. We supported our husbands and raised our children and told ourselves it was enough. Her eyes filled with tears. It wasn't enough. Not for me and not for my daughter. I failed you, Elaine, by not fighting for you, by accepting limitations that should never have been placed on either of us. The room fell silent. My father stared at my mother as if seeing her for the first time. I want to speak to Elaine, he finally said. Alone. The others filed out reluctantly, my mother squeezing my hand as she passed. When the door closed, my father and I regarded each other across a gulf of years and pain. You did this, he said, gesturing weakly to his hospital bed, his damaged body. Destroyed me.
No, Dad. You did this.
Your rigid beliefs, your refusal to change, your inability to see your daughter as worthy. I just refused to be destroyed alongside you. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, the company. What will you do with it? That depends on you. I have 2 proposals. I laid out the options clearly and concisely. Option 1. I take complete control. You and your sons become employees who may or may not be retained based on performance. Your name remains on the building, but your authority ends today. His jaw tightened. And option 2? A true family partnership. You publicly acknowledge my role in the company's founding and my contributions over the years. David and Michael undergo proper management training if they want to keep their positions. Mom gets the board seat she's always secretly wanted but never asked for. And we establish the Helena Carter Scholarship for Women in Business to ensure no other girl is told her brain doesn't matter because of her gender. Blackmail, he muttered. Justice, I corrected. And generosity, considering I could legally take everything right now. I stood to leave. You have 48 hours to decide. Choose wisely. In the corridor, I found my mother waiting. He'll never agree, she said, falling into step beside me. His pride won't allow it. Then he'll lose everything. I replied simply. And that doesn't trouble you? I stopped walking. Of course it troubles me. He's still my father. You're still my family. But some patterns have to be broken, no matter the cost. The next day, I met with an old childhood friend, Tara Mitchell, who still lived in the area. Over coffee, she told me something I hadn't known, how my story, which had circulated through our community after I left, had affected her. You were the reason I found the courage to leave Jason, she said, referring to her ex-husband. Everyone said good Lebanese girls don't get divorced, that I should stay no matter how he treated me. But then I thought about you, defying your father, building your own life. If Elaine Carter could walk away from her whole family for what she believed in, I could leave one abusive man. Her words stayed with me as I prepared for the final family meeting. My actions hadn't just been about me. They had ripple effects I'd never considered. The meeting took place in the Carter Manufacturing Conference Room. My father, still weak but insistent on attending, sat in his wheelchair at the table's head, a position he'd occupied for decades. My mother sat to his right, David and Michael flanking them. I sat opposite, Jasmine and Sandra beside me for support. We've considered your proposals, my father began formally. We find them both unacceptable. My heart sank. Even now, after everything, his pride would be his downfall. However, he continued, David has suggested a third option. David cleared his throat. We propose a gradual transition of leadership. Dad steps down as CEO immediately, with you taking the position. Michael and I retain our current roles but report to you. Mom joins the board as you suggested. The scholarship program is established. And Dad remains as chairman emeritus for 2 years before full retirement. I studied their faces, looking for the catch. And my contributions? The public acknowledgement. To my shock, it was Michael who responded. A press release has been drafted recognizing your early innovations and their impact on the company. It needs your approval before distribution. I turned to my father. And you agreed to this? For the first time in my life, I saw uncertainty in Abraham Carter's eyes. Your mother and brothers have convinced me it's the best path forward. My mother reached for his hand. We told your father we would resign our positions and support you if he didn't agree. Even Michael. My brother scowled, but didn't contradict her. It seems I've been outvoted, my father said with difficulty. In my own family. In that moment, I understood what had happened. My mother and brothers had finally done what they should have done years ago, stood up to my father's rigid authoritarianism. Not just for me, but for themselves. The balance of power had shifted, and we all felt it. I accept your proposal, I said, extending my hand across the table. Welcome to the new Carter Manufacturing. My father hesitated only briefly before taking my hand, his grip weaker than I remembered, but still present. It wasn't the total vindication I'd imagined, but perhaps it was something more valuable, the beginning of change. 1 year later, Carter Manufacturing had transformed almost beyond recognition. With Logitech's technology integrated into our operations and fresh capital investment, we'd not only recovered lost ground but expanded into new markets. The workforce had grown by 30%, and our reputation in the industry had shifted from old-school traditionalist to innovative leader. The physical changes to the company were immediately visible. Modernized production facilities, state-of-the-art technology, even the updated logo that now included a subtle nod to Helena Carter, the grandmother who had believed in me when no one else did. But the most significant changes were less tangible: the culture, the relationships, the healing of old wounds. My father, required by our agreement to attend therapy, had begun the slow, painful process of examining his prejudices. The therapist, Dr. Nasser, specialized in working with men from traditional Middle Eastern backgrounds, helping them navigate the clash between cultural heritage and modern values. Your father has made remarkable progress, Dr. Nasser told me during a consultation my father had authorized. He's beginning to understand how his own upbringing shaped his views of women, business, and family. It's not easy for a man of his generation to question beliefs that have defined his entire identity. I saw evidence of this progress in small ways. My father asking my opinion in meetings, acknowledging my expertise in front of others, even occasionally expressing pride in what I'd built at Logitech. They weren't grand gestures of reconciliation, but for Abraham Carter, they represented seismic shifts. My mother flourished in her board role in ways that surprised everyone, perhaps most of all, herself. She brought valuable perspective on product applications for female consumers, an angle the company had never seriously considered. She also mentored young women in the company, something she confessed gave her more satisfaction than decades of perfect dinner parties. I keep thinking about all the years I wasted, she told me over lunch one day. All the ideas I never voiced because I believed they didn't matter. They matter now, I assured her. And you're making sure the next generation of women knows their ideas matter too. David adapted well to the new structure, his natural business acumen finally flourishing now that he was free from our father's shadow. He and I developed a solid working relationship built on mutual respect, healing some of the pain of his silent complicity in my earlier exclusion. Michael's journey was more complicated. Initially, he resigned rather than work under his sister, his male pride too wounded to accept the new reality. But after 3 months of unsuccessful job hunting, his reputation for arrogance preceding him, he returned, humbled and willing to accept a lower position in product development. I'm not going to pretend I'm happy about how this happened, he told me bluntly on his first day back. But I'm not an idiot. The company's doing better than it ever did under Dad. I want to be part of that. It wasn't an apology, but from Michael, it was a start. The merger between Logitech and the renamed Carter Logitech Manufacturing created an industry powerhouse that combined cutting-edge software with established manufacturing expertise. I split my time between San Francisco and Michigan, building bridges between the two company cultures just as I was building bridges within my own family. The Helena Carter Foundation for Women in Business became my passion project. With an initial endowment of $20 million, we provided scholarships, mentorship, and seed funding to women from traditional backgrounds seeking to break barriers in male-dominated industries. The foundation's headquarters, located in a renovated section of the original Carter manufacturing building, featured a wall of portraits, women from our family history whose contributions had been erased, now finally acknowledged. Perhaps the most profound moment of the year came during the company's anniversary celebration. Employees, clients, and family gathered in the expanded facility for the unveiling of a new research and development center. My father, who had insisted on standing for the occasion despite his ongoing mobility issues, was scheduled to give brief remarks before I delivered the main address. He approached the podium slowly, leaning heavily on his cane. The audience fell silent, aware of the significance of Abraham Carter addressing the company he had founded, now transformed under his daughter's leadership. "When I started this company 40 years ago," he began, his voice stronger than I expected, "I believed I knew everything worth knowing about business. I believed certain truths were immutable. Men led, women supported. Fathers pass legacies to sons.
Tradition trumpet Innovation."
He paused, looking directly at me. I was wrong. A murmur went through the crowd. Abraham Carter admitting error was unprecedented. My greatest innovation wasn't a manufacturing process or a business strategy. It was my daughter, Elaine. And my greatest failure was not recognizing her brilliance because I couldn't see past her gender. His voice broke slightly. I nearly destroyed this company because of that blindness. She saved it, despite everything I did to stand in her way. Tears blurred my vision as he continued. I am not an easy man to change. Ask my wife. She'll confirm. Gentle laughter rippled through the audience as my mother nodded emphatically. But I am learning. Every day I am learning to see the world as it is, not as I was taught it should be. And while I regret the years lost, I am grateful for this chance to be part of something new, something better than what I built alone. He gestured for me to join him at the podium, and for a moment, I couldn't move. Jasmine nudged me forward. As I reached my father, he did something he hadn't done since I was a small child. He embraced me publicly, kissing both my cheeks in the traditional way. I was wrong, Binti, he whispered, using the Arabic term for my daughter that he'd abandoned when I defied him. And you were magnificent. After the ceremony, I visited my grandmother Helena's grave, now relocated to a peaceful cemetery near the company headquarters. I came here often, bringing her up to date on the changes in our family, the progress of the foundation bearing her name, the women whose lives we were changing. We did it, Grandma, I said, placing white roses on her headstone. We broke the cycle. To my surprise, I heard footsteps behind me and turned to find my mother approaching with her own bouquet. May I join you? She asked. We stood together in comfortable silence before she spoke again. I should have fought for you back then, she said softly. I want you to know I understand that now. You're fighting now, I replied. That's what matters. On the drive back to the office, I reflected on the journey that had brought me here. What had begun as a quest for revenge had evolved into something far more meaningful, not just the redemption of a family business, but the transformation of a family itself. The true fortune wasn't the financial empire I'd built, or even the family company I'd reclaimed. It was breaking the generational patterns that had limited women in my family for decades. That evening, I received a notification about the first recipient of the Helena Carter Scholarship, a young Lebanese-American woman named Zaina Bashara with dreams of starting her own engineering firm. Her application essay described growing up in a traditional family where her technical aptitude was dismissed as unfeminine. Despite having the highest grades in her school, her parents expected her to study nursing or education, acceptable fields for a woman, rather than pursuing her passion for mechanical engineering. My counselor showed me an article about Elaine Carter, she wrote. Reading her story made me realize I'm not alone. If she could build a billion-dollar company despite her family's expectations, maybe I can build my own future too. The cycle was breaking, rippling outward beyond my own family. The pain I'd experienced was being transformed into purpose that would change not just one life, but potentially generations to come. That, more than any corporate acquisition or personal vindication, was the true measure of success. As I think about what my family's journey can teach others, I'd love to hear your experiences with overcoming family expectations or breaking generational patterns. Have you ever had to fight for your worth within your own family? How did it change you? Please share your stories in the comments below. If this narrative of standing up for yourself despite family pressure resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of family karma and personal triumph. Thank you for joining me on this journey of reclaiming my family legacy and creating something new from the ashes of the old. Remember, sometimes the greatest revenge isn't destruction, it's transformation.